Hello, YouTube world. Hello. So, today is the 11th of November, which means that it is Remembrance Day in Canada and throughout the British Commonwealth. And I just wanted to do a special live stream for Remembrance Day. My grandfather, excuse that noise, my grandfather on my mother's side, so my mother's dad, was a World War II veteran who fought in World War II against the Nazis on behalf of Scotland. So I've talked before about how my ancestors go back in Canada and the USA in North America for 400 years. Yeah, that's on my dad's side of the family. On my mom's side of the family, my mom is actually the first person in her family who was born in Canada. So my mom's family are quite relatively recent immigrants compared to my dad's family from Scotland. So my grandfather on my mother's side fought against the Nazis in World War II on behalf of Scotland. And he was captured by the Nazis. The troops that he was with, they were all captured by the Nazis near the beginning of the war, and put into a concentration camp, a prisoner of war camp, where they spent the majority of World War II, so about 5 years of his life. And he was forced to work. He was an auto mechanic, my grandfather, and so the Nazis put him to work repairing their broken down tanks. I believe there's even a story where he saw Hitler from a distance on one occasion when Hitler came to inspect the POW camp where my grandfather was imprisoned in Poland. This was. I've also heard that he survived on apple cores being thrown to him by the guards, and he eventually escaped this POW camp by stealing one of the Nazi tanks that he had been assigned to repair. And he drove that tank right out of the camp, right across Europe, I believe, to Belgium, where somebody hid him. He took refuge on a farm. Somebody hid him on a farm. So it's quite a story. I mean, it sounds like it's a movie, but it's the truth. And I've never met my grandfather, neither of my grandfathers for that matter. I've never met him because he died about 2 weeks before I was due to be. He died about 2 weeks before I was born, my grandfather. Unfortunately, I would really like to have met him. But he's regarded as a war hero in my family, and I just wanted to mention that. I'm going to rebroadcast 2 live streams that I did last year where I talked about this in greater depth, and that was when my grandmother, so this grandfather that I've been talking about who fought in World War II, his wife, so my mom's mom, she passed away last year, just over a year ago now, last fall, she passed away. And so it was after she passed away, I did 2 live streams where I was talking about her, and then I was also talking about my grandfather and his World War II history. So I'm just going to rebroadcast those instead of repeating myself, but that's just the summary of it. And because right now I want to talk about something else. Okay, before I do those, right now I want to talk about. So yesterday in a live stream, my Sunday prayer stream, I was reflecting on the recent U.S. presidential election and talking about how the media really did a terrible job during the 2020 election by deliberately not covering corruption involving Joe Biden and his son during the election period. They did cover it after the election, but not during the election, even though that was publicly available information at the time. But I was saying in that live stream that, I don't trust the mainstream media, but my distrust for the mainstream media goes back much further than the 2020 election. It goes back much further than even Trump joining politics. And I was giving the example of the Iraq War, the second Iraq War, and how the media was caught perpetuating disinformation about alleged weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And this was based on false intelligence reports. And that the media should have been able to interrogate those reports, question those reports, and it would have been apparent that that was not reliable information, and that there were in fact no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So there was in fact no valid reason for the second war in Iraq. And the mainstream media executives have admitted as much because they were caught in this, and they were admitting it on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Okay. So much of my life has been shaped by the Oprah Winfrey Show. I mean, I even think about that. I often reference the Oprah Winfrey Show. Things that I watched on that show from decades ago stick with me. It definitely shaped me. I grew up watching Oprah every day after school. Okay. So, but you know what? I was just thinking about today. Yeah, that was a big part of me, and a big reason why I distrust the mainstream media had to do with that. But actually, my distrust with the mainstream media predates the second Iraq War and that terrible lapse from journalism. So a whole war was fought based on false pretenses. Oh my God. But my distrust for the mainstream media goes back even further than that. It goes back to high school and a certain incident that happened in high school regarding Remembrance Day and poppies. So I want to talk about that because I think it's important. So let's go way back now. This was when, let's see here. This was when I was in grade 10. And I went to Sir Winston Churchill. There's a name from World War II for you. I went to Sir Winston Churchill Secondary School in Vancouver. Just as an aside, that is a public high school in Vancouver on the west side of the city, which is regarded as the more well-off side of the city, even though my family was not well-off. Just happened to find an affordable rental housing on the west side of the city. It's barely on the west side of the city, though. It's kind of in the middle. But it's been, for a very long time, been regarded as kind of a preppy school. I think less so today, but definitely back in the 90s and even before, it had a reputation for very high levels of academic achievement. In my video, Simply the Best, where I'm showing documentation regarding my academic achievements, my university degrees, but I even include letters going back to high school. I was part of a group project that won second prize in the American Express geography competition, which was a national geography competition in Canada back in the 90s. And my group won second prize. And I included that letter regarding that in that video. And you can see in that letter, it says that half the winners in this national contest all across Canada, half the winners all came from this one school, which was the school that I went to, Churchill. Okay, so, and there's also something called the Fraser Institute rankings of high school performance, and typically it would be private schools who would rank at the top, but Churchill, Sir Winston Churchill Secondary School, is an example of a public school that would rank at the top of the Fraser Institute rankings right alongside private schools, at least back in the 90s when I went there. And so it also had an international baccalaureate program, which was a program for smart kids, which I was a part of. And it also had a French immersion program. Okay, so it drew students in from all across the city. You didn't have to live in that neighborhood to go to that school if you were going there to be part of the French immersion program or part of the international baccalaureate program. I did live in the neighborhood though. And just as another aside, so Chinese parents are known for being very strict on their kids regarding academic achievement. So my neighborhood in Vancouver was a magnet for Chinese immigrants. So back in the 80s and 90s, it would have been those coming from Hong Kong, so not People's Republic of China, but still similar cultural value for education, and very strict parents regarding the education of their kids. That's where we get this term tiger moms, right? Which are these like really strict Chinese mothers who will, they'll punish their kids if they don't get straight A's. I mean, I don't know exactly how it works, but that is the culture. Okay, so those families were attracted to settling in the neighborhood that I lived in Vancouver, specifically because Churchill was known as such a high-achieving school. Okay, so just to give you some background, about where I come from. So I come from this, even though I went to public school, I come from this, this public school that was, off the charts in terms of its academic achievements. And so a lot of smart kids went there. It was also one of the largest high schools. There's two really, really, really big high schools in Vancouver, and then a whole bunch of smaller ones. And so this was one of the two biggest schools in the city. Back in the 90s, had about 2,000 students. Okay, and it was at this high school. They have grade 8s to 12. I was in grade 10, so this is 1994. No, it would have been 1993. Let me think about that. 92, 93 would have been grade 8. 93, 94 would have been grade 9. So 94. It would have been 1994 in November. There was all this controversy on the news regarding my high school and Remembrance Day. Now, this is what happened. I remember it was after school, and there was homeroom or something. It was towards the end of the day. At the very end of the day, a certain day in November, just before Remembrance Day, all the students were given ballots. There was, at least in my experience, there was no discussion about this in advance. There was no classroom discussion. Maybe other classrooms did discuss it, but not in my classroom. So I didn't know anything about what this ballot was about. But we were all given ballots. All the students were given ballots to vote in a referendum in the school about. So would the school be selling poppies? You know, poppies, which is traditionally worn in Canada for Remembrance Day, and it's usually sold by veterans from the Legion outside of grocery stores and such. I mean, usually you pay by donation, but schools also do it too. So a school will get all these poppies from the Legion, and students will go around selling them throughout the school by donation, and then the money that's raised will go to the Legion to fund programs to support war veterans. Okay, so that's what the poppies are for. And but there had been some controversy regarding, I believe, that the legions were banning people from entering the Legion who were wearing turbans. And this was controversial, seen as racist, because, there are World War II veterans and veterans of other wars, for that matter, who do wear turbans as part of their religious faith. And so it was considered reprehensible that the Legion would be banning that. Okay, but the Legion had a tradition where you have to remove your headgear. Okay, so that was the controversy, and so as a result of that controversy, there was a group of students who did not want to buy these poppies and have the money funding the Legion, which they saw as racist, but they still wanted to be able to wear poppies for Remembrance Day out of respect for war veterans. So they were some students were making their own poppies out of construction paper, and wanting to sell those alongside the official poppies that were from the Legion. Okay, and so all the students were given a ballot to vote in a referendum. The question was something like, do you want to have poppies being sold in the school, only the poppies from the Legion? That was one option. Or do you want to have both? So you could have poppies from the Legion and these other poppies that students had made, so having them both being sold at the school to raise money for war veterans. Okay. I remember I'm very traditional. I didn't know any context about this. I voted to go with just the Legion poppies. That was how I voted. Okay. But after that, the way I voted did not win. It was the side that wanted to sell both types of poppies at the school is the side that won this referendum. And indeed, both types of poppies were sold at the school that Remembrance Day. And this turned into a media firestorm. Just about every day that week, there were reporters at my high school, and it was on the 6 o'clock evening news in Vancouver. Back then in the 90s, this was known as BCTV. Later on it became global news, but back in the 90s it was called BCTV. Tony Parsons was the newscaster, and so it was on BCTV news hour at 6 o'clock every day that week. A very sensationalistic story about what had happened at this school regarding this referendum about poppies. And the news did such a terrible job of reporting what happened. They got the story wrong. I mean, I don't know how they could have got it wrong by accident. It would seem to me that they had lied. And the news said that the Legion poppies had been banned at my high school in this referendum, that the students had voted to ban Legion poppies. And that was not the case. That simply was not the case. There was never a ban on Legion poppies at my high school. No, those Legion poppies were being sold at the high school to raise money for the Legion. But in addition to those poppies, there were these other poppies that students had made that were also being sold at the school to raise money for war veterans, to go directly to war veterans, bypassing the Legion. And so if you were a student there, you had a choice that Remembrance Day. Were you going to buy a poppy, a Legion poppy, or were you going to buy a poppy that was not a Legion poppy? Okay, or I mean, I guess supposedly you could, in theory, you could buy one of each. Nothing would stop you. So both types of poppies were being sold at the school. But the news lied about that and said that the Legion poppies had been banned. And it was a very sensationalistic story that, portrayed these students as being very disrespectful to the Legion. And so this was certainly a different time compared to the time that we're living in now, because really what had happened at that school with selling both types of poppies, I mean, it was an early example of wokeism, right? It was about political correctness, and the students had taken a very politically correct, what would be regarded as a very politically correct stance by offering both types of poppies. But because some students really did not want the Legion poppies, they wanted to buy these other poppies because they were so offended at the Legion for banning war veterans who wore turbans. And of course, since then, the Legion has changed their policies, and war veterans who wear turbans are allowed at the Legion. Okay. But at the time, it was not like that. And so the students were taking a very politically correct, woke perspective by offering this alternative. But never were the Legion poppies actually banned from the school. But the news took a very an anti-woke perspective, and basically portraying the students as being disrespectful to Remembrance Day tradition of wearing poppies from the Legion by banning them. And this was in the news every day that week. And I think just about every student who went to the school at that time was shocked, just shocked. It was an early education on, wow, the media can just take a story, dumb it down, simplify it, and run with it, and really pass off an incorrect view, a distorted view of what happened. And we all saw that. So we all got an early education. All the students at that school, we got an early education on the pitfalls of the mainstream media. And that was my first time. I mean, even if I disagreed with the students, or I didn't even necessarily disagree with them, I didn't even have any background knowledge when I was voting. But whatever my opinion may have been on the poppies, it wasn't the way that I voted did not win. I voted just to have the Legion poppies, but that side of the referendum didn't win. It was the side that wanted both types of poppies that won. Okay, so even though it wasn't my side who won, I was aware that Legion poppies were not banned at Churchill High School. I mean, everybody knew that. So the way that the fact that the news was saying that, and they were using the word ban, it was well, why are they lying? Why are they saying this? Why are they portraying us in such a negative light? And so that was the beginning. That was, I mean, I guess I have to be grateful for it, because that was the beginning of my eyes really being opened to the power of the media and how it can just really distort the truth. and of course the media has. I've only been shown even more examples of that since then, and the whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth. Really, I've worn poppies for many years. I've stopped wearing poppies. I don't wear a poppy at Remembrance Day. I just want to say that, and it's partly because of what happened in my high school. But I remember the sacrifices of my grandfather and other soldiers, other veterans. I remember that every day. I don't just do it on Remembrance Day. For me, it is something that I keep with me all the time, and it shapes my perspective on life. Okay, and I don't just go to it to those memories on Remembrance Day, and I don't like how it seems to be almost like about group conformity at this point, and that's what the news, sensationalistic misreporting of the news taught me as well. This is like a kind of a group ritual that everybody is like required to do, and in that sense it almost becomes like you're not remembering, you're just going along to conform with the group, and something about that just rubs me the wrong way. I believe in individual freedom, and I don't like to follow along with group conformity. So that's why I've stopped wearing a poppy at Remembrance Day. And but that doesn't mean to say that I am disrespectful to war veterans, or that I would not be remembering the sacrifices that they've made. To the contrary, I keep that close at heart all the time, not only on Remembrance Day. And that is something that I've talked about in my Make Vancouver Canadian Again meme. Referencing my grandfather being in World War II, which was something that was mocked, and that by leftists on Twitter, when that meme went viral, it was shameful that they would mock that. So I keep it with me all the time, not only at Remembrance Day. And another thing is, these poppies, the pin, if you're wearing a bomber jacket or like a puffy down jacket, the pin goes through that material and damages the jacket. It really does. So I can't that's another reason as well. And but isn't it ironic too? Does anybody ever think about this, that one of the biggest so-called wars of modern times has been the war on drugs, yet poppies, which are what opium is made from, are a symbol of how we remember war in Canada. Doesn't anybody ever think that that's ironic? I do. And it's even comes to my mind, it's even more ironic now, given the hysteria gripping Canada regarding drugs. Not that anybody's getting pure heroin anyways. It's all synthetic fentanyl. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I don't wear a poppy. I don't like to be part of group conformity, and I remember the sacrifices of war veterans all year round, not only on Remembrance Day, and I think that Remembrance Day, in some senses, in more recent years, has been perverted into a celebration of war, which is not what it's, to my mind, not what it's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about remembering the sacrifices that veterans made when they went to war, so that we could avoid that in the future. So that we could avoid that. They went to World War II was supposed to be the war to end all wars. They never wanted to have another world war. So it's like that was terrible, lest we forget because we don't want to repeat the past. Somehow it seems that it's been perverted into, lest we forget, let's celebrate war and repeat it. That seems to be the way that it is framed now. And I don't like that. I don't like that. I am a die-hard pacifist and anti-war person. And I don't like celebrating war. So that would be another reason why I don't wear poppies, because it seems that it's been perverted into something like that. Okay, so I'm done talking about this. I see that literally nobody is watching, and it's par for the course. Whatever, YouTube, whatever. I'm going to now play my live streams talking about my grandfather and his war contributions, his war experiences, some of them at least, ones that have been memorialized in my family. So again, what I'm about to play is a rebroadcast of two restreams that I did last year, last fall, after my grandmother passed away. Where do you? There it is. But I would say okay, good enough. Close that. So are we streaming? Okay. Hello, YouTube world. I just want to make sure the sound is working before I really get into this. Hello, yeah, it's working just fine. So my grandmother has passed away. I just found out she died a few nights ago, and I just got off the phone from my mom, and she told me, and of course my mom is very upset. This is her mother, and I just want to say a few words because she was quite an amazing person. This grandmother, she's my last grandmother that I had still alive. Okay, she was born on the same day as the Queen, and the Queen died last year, didn't she? So my grandmother actually outlived the Queen. She was from Scotland, northern Scotland, the Highlands, Aberdeen to be specific, which is on the east coast of Scotland, the coast of the North Sea. Okay, faces to the North Sea. I've never been there. But I'd love to go. There was one time when I visiting for Christmas, and I showed her on the internet Google Street View. I took my grandma on a tour of Aberdeen through Google Street View. She was recognizing buildings in different places. She hadn't been there probably since the 60s or something. Okay. But so she lived through World War II in Scotland. And, it's something that you don't hear about very often. I don't know why, but, that part of Scotland during World War II was targeted by the Nazis for bombing campaigns. So it was a place that had a lot of bombs being dropped on it during World War II. I mean, not everywhere was the same in World War II. Some places might not have had hardly any bombs being dropped. But Aberdeen was a target, and I believe that's because it's an industrial area, and it was a place where the British side was manufacturing their weapons. So that's why it was a target for the Nazis during World War II. And so the Nazis were bombing Aberdeen quite a bit. And my grandma has stories where they'd hear sirens going off, special sirens, meaning that there's a bombing happening, and you had to run for your life to a bomb shelter underground. And they'd be underground for hours in the dark, waiting for these bombs to stop. All these people, and singing songs. I can only imagine how terrifying that must have been. So she lived through all of that. And she would have just been a young girl, right? In World War II. So if she's born in 1926, the World War started in 1939. She would have been 13 when it started. And then by the time it ended, she would have been 19 in 1945. And that's when she met my grandfather, who also is from Scotland, Aberdeen. But he was fighting in the war, World War II. But very soon into the war, his whole regiment with the military that he was with, all the troops, they got captured by the Nazis and sent to work for free, like slaves basically, to work for the Nazis in a prisoner of war camp. Now he I'm not going to talk too much about him because this is about my grandmother, but I'll just say a few words. He was a mechanic, an auto mechanic by trade. So the Nazis put him to work repairing their tanks, that needed to be repaired. And that was how he escaped, actually. He was there for many years, for most of the war. But he did escape this POW camp by stealing one of the Nazi tanks that he had been assigned to work on and drove it right out of the camp. I mean, wow. And I believe he drove it all the way to Belgium. There's some story where he was hidden in a farmhouse or something by some people in Belgium. But anyways, when the war was over, I think he was with his brother or his cousin or something like that. Is this how the story goes? But he was with someone, and they were coming back from the war and on a ship arriving in Aberdeen, and this either brother or cousin that he was with was to meet his girlfriend, and then the girlfriend had like a sister or a cousin, something like that. I don't really remember, who was my grandma. So that's how he met my grandma. Okay, she was there to greet all the soldiers coming back from the war. And they met, and they got married and had 3 kids. and the first two of their kids were boys and were born in Scotland. And but then, I mean, I guess Scotland probably wasn't a very good place to live in the 50s, like after the war. So they immigrated to Canada, to Vancouver. My God, what possessed them to come to Vancouver, I don't know. But they came all the way to Vancouver from Aberdeen, Scotland, okay, in the 50s. And shortly after that is when my mom was born. So my mom is the first person in her family who was actually born in Canada. Even her two older brothers were not born in Canada. They were born in Scotland. Okay. And then, actually, so my mom was born in 1958. And when she was 4 years old, so I guess that would be 1962, my mom and my grandma went back to Scotland to live there for just about a year. So my mom actually, even though my mom was born in Canada, she did live for about a year of her life when she was 4 years old. I mean, she barely remembers it. She in Scotland, in Aberdeen. Okay, but then after that year, I don't know if it was exactly a year, she came back to Canada, and so my mom spent the rest of her life in Canada. Okay, and then she met my dad in the 70s and gave birth to me in 1979 and all the rest. Okay, and then that's how everything connects to me. So it's quite devastating because my grandma, I would say she's the matriarch of the family. She's the oldest person in the family. She would get birthday cards sent to her from the Queen. Okay? I don't believe she ever became a Canadian citizen. And she came to Canada in the 50s, and she lived there all the rest of her life, most of her life, until she just passed away the other day. I don't think she ever actually became a Canadian citizen. You didn't have to if you were British. And what else about her? Although if you trace her genealogy, she's got a lot of ancestors. She's from Scotland, northern Scotland, but she's got a lot of ancestors actually from the very far south of England. Okay? Near Dorset and Torquay. So the very far south of England. And they wanted to get away from that area. They went to the furthest away that you could get within still being on the main island of Britain from southern England, like on the English Channel. The furthest away place you could pretty much get is Aberdeen. So I don't know that distant family history, why or everything, but that's what happened. So she's actually has a lot of ancestry from southern England, and she's very beautiful when she was young. I have two sisters. Both of them are younger than me, but the older of the two looks quite a bit like her. If you look at a picture of my sister, and if you look at my grandma Hall at around the same age, they look like the same person. What else? Well, she may... So she spoke Doric. So she was somebody, I mean, if you weren't used to how she spoke, most Canadians would not be able to understand, would have a very hard time understanding what she was saying. Because it's not just that she had a Scottish accent. She was actually technically speaking a different language, which is called Doric, D-O-R-I-C, which is the language of the Aberdeen area in Scotland, so northeastern Scotland. And I believe that if you go to Aberdeen today, you're going to hardly find anyone who speaks Doric. Okay, it's like much of the rest of the world. It's things have been standardized, and local difference has been reduced. As this is part of the process of globalization, and so that dialect that's associated with that region, I mean, I wouldn't say it's died out, but it's just not as common. So most people would just be speaking English, but with a Scottish accent. That's my understanding. I've never been to Aberdeen, but that is my understanding. I've met people from Aberdeen, young people, and they don't talk like my grandma. Okay, so my grandma would speak Doric, which is how the people in Aberdeen spoke World War II and before, and it's technically considered a different language. It has a lot of words that are the same as English, like, but it also has a lot of different words too. Like every other word, what might be an English word, and then the next word will be like a word that you wouldn't recognize in English. Okay, and I do have a book somewhere. Well, it's in storage, but she gave me a book, which is like helps you to learn Doric. Let's speak Doric. And I actually understand it, like even without that book. All of her grandchildren do, okay, because she would babysit her grandchildren, and like my cousins, she babysat even more than me. She babysat them every day, but she didn't babysit me every day. But still, like from my times of going there as a kid, like we knew what she was saying. We couldn't talk like that ourselves, but we understood what she was saying. And I didn't even know that it was a different language. Like, I didn't know until I was in my 20s. I'm like, what? You mean I've known a different language this whole time? I didn't even know I knew a different language. I just thought it was a Scottish accent with a few funny words thrown in. It's basically what it is, I guess. But it's like a lot of funny words thrown in. Like a lot of different words. I can't even think to talk like that right now. Like, a bit of the Doric language has died with the passing of my grandma. She spoke it in a pure form because she came from Scotland, and she kept her language the same as when she left. So she spoke basically how the people in Aberdeen spoke during World War II. So, she I mean, linguistically, it was very interesting. So for people who are interested in linguistics, very interesting to listen to her talk. And there's no way that I could ever try to replicate it. I mean, I could try. I would need that book with me, but I wouldn't do it justice. So I'm not going to try right now. I've never really been able to speak it, but I can understand. I can understand what she's saying, for the most part. I mean, sometimes she might come out with something you're like, "What did she say?" But basically, I did understand what she was saying. I don't know why I wanted to say she made big chips, just throwing it in there. She made really good French fries, as people call them. We call them chips. She was a tough woman to have come through World War II, and she worked in Vancouver. She worked in factories, and that, like, so her and my grandfather, who passed away before I was ever even born. I never met any of my grandfathers. They all died before I was born. Whereas growing up, I had 4 grandmothers. Most people only have 2. I had no grandfathers, but I had 4 grandmothers, which was this grandmother I'm talking about right now, then my dad's mother, and then I had 2 great grandmothers. Okay, one of them who were alive during my childhood. One of them, though, I never actually met. Okay, but I used to think that was weird that I had 4 living great grandmothers, but no grandfathers. I don't think there's much more that I want to say. I loved her, and because of all the stupidity of this world that we're going through with COVID and the cost of living and the cost of transportation, everything is just through the roof. I never got to see her. I haven't seen her in years. But She definitely made a strong impact on this world. She definitely left a legacy. She had 3 kids, and each one of those kids has had kids, and then some of those kids have kids. So she was a great grandmother. She left her DNA through her grandchildren. Definitely her DNA is going to carry on. Just because I'm not having kids, the other ones are, and it's very strong DNA. Oh, you want her DNA in your body? That's for sure, in your lineage, because she's tough, and and but she's not just tough, like also caring and kind and loving. She was a really top person, golden, shining very bright. She must be in heaven and in the best conditions. She was very clean too. Oh my god. You could eat off her floor. You could eat off her floor. If cleanliness is godliness, well, I'm sure heaven is a little bit cleaner now that she's up there. Like, she was a clean freak. um, and I think people got that who lived through World War II. Quite a bit of them did. That's all I have to say. I do miss you, Grandma, and I'm sorry that I didn't see you in the last few years of your life, and I just hope you're in a better place. I know you are. And if you can help me to avoid homelessness, I'd really appreciate it. That's all I have to say. Hello, YouTube fucking world. Let me just double check that this is fucking working. Why is it charging fucking slowly? Why? Why, bitch? You were charging fast a minute ago. You stupid bitch. Holy fuck. Well, it's working. I don't fucking know what to fucking do. Here. It shouldn't be having to go on this stupid power. Because that's where it's gonna fucking fall over. Holy shit, bitch. I'm in a foul fucking mood. Anyways, why is technology so fucking glitchy as fucking fuck? Nothing is fucking working right. For days now. And I'm getting fucking sick of it. I've just uninstalled Streamster app. Holy shit. Holy shit. I will never put that piece of crap software on my computer ever again. It made streaming so fucking difficult. Holy fucking shit. Like, these are not at all user fucking friendly softwares, which they should be made to be. Okay? And every fucking live stream that you do just picks up the last information. Like, it's like a copy of your previous live stream. So the same title, the same fucking thumbnail. You can't take the thumbnail out. You just have to replace it with another thumbnail. What if you don't want to put a thumbnail in? Well, if you don't, it's going to have the previous thumbnail, whatever you used from the previous fucking video. It's fucking dumb. Okay? It's dumb. It's dumb. And it's way more complicated than it fucking needs to be. All I wanted to have was fucking filters on my YouTube live streams through the laptop. YouTube has every fucking app in the world has that except for fucking YouTube on a laptop. So if you're doing a live stream through a fucking smartphone on YouTube, well, then you can have filters, but not on a fucking laptop. What's the big deal, YouTube? Like, can you realize that it's almost 2024? Like, why don't you fucking get with the times? But anyways, and every fucking thing requires multiple signing in, just to use my fucking headphones. I've got to fucking sign into fucking Sony. And then they're like, "Oh, wrong password. Reset your fucking password." Then you sign in again. It says, "Are you wanting to sign in with a Sony account or a Google account?" I don't fucking know. But I read so because both of them want you to put in your email address. Well, what if your email address is a Gmail? Like, does that count as being a Sony account, or you're signing in with your Gmail account? Like, I was going around through circles with that. And then, and it's fucking dangerous to sign into anything with your Google account when you're somebody like me, because if Google gets it in their mind that they want to send a fucking text message to verify who the fuck I am, well, that's going to be a fucking problem because my only fucking phone number is through fucking text fucking now. And Google doesn't like text now numbers. They don't send verification codes to text now numbers. What's your fucking problem, Google? Even the fucking bank does it. The bank for the online banking, and they want to make sure that you are who you say you are. They're to protect against fraud for money. The bank will send a text message code to a text now number, and you get that code and you enter it in and you're good to go. Why does Google have to be prejudiced against text now numbers? It amounts to being prejudiced against the poor, right? Because they're free. They're free. They're free. They're free phone numbers. That's why. So because you haven't paid for it. Who the fuck cares, Google, if it's been paid for or not? You're only supposed to be verifying that it's the person who they say they are. It's none of your business whether or not it was a free service or not. You fucking assholes. If it's good enough for the fucking bank, which is safeguarding financial assets, it should be good enough for fucking Google too. And they can't fucking get it in their minds that maybe if somebody's going through a divorce, they have a different phone number now because the previous phone was under their spouse's name. Google can't fucking wrap that around their fucking heads. Or maybe it's because it's a same-sex divorce. Is that what it is, Google? Are you discriminating based on sexual orientation? Yeah, it could be. Since they don't have same-sex divorce in the United States, they don't even have fucking same-sex marriage in much of the country. Fucking idiots. But what was I wanting to fucking say? Oh, I was saying something, and my whole fucking in my live stream, and my whole fucking screen went black, and like the computer had a complete fucking meltdown. Obviously, somebody doesn't like what I had to fucking say, so I'm gonna have to fucking say it again. I was just talking about how my grandmother passed away the other day. My grandmother at the age of 97, who's from Scotland and lived through World War II. And her husband, my grandfather, he passed away before I was even born, okay? But he was a soldier in World War II for Scotland and was captured by the Nazis early on in the war and went to work in a POW camp. The Nazis put him to work repairing tanks because he was an auto mechanic by trade. And that was where he spent most of the 6 years of the war, was in this POW camp until he finally escaped by stealing one of the tanks that one of the Nazi tanks that he had been working on. So he's like driving an enemy tank. Like, that's an amazing story. It sounds like a fucking movie. And, but the thing that I was trying to say is, my whole fucking life, I've been hearing about the internment camps for Jewish people. And, there's the movie Schindler's List, which brought that part of history to pop culture. Okay. But, a lot of people, young people today, people who are younger than me, people who weren't alive during World War II, they could be forgiven for not knowing that, it wasn't only Jewish people who went to internment camps in World War II. Yeah, Jewish people went to internment camps. Yeah. But lots of other people did too, not just Jewish people. Okay. So there was gay people were going to internment camps, this is my understanding. And people with mental illness and gypsies. Okay. Those groups were also sent to internment camps, as well as POWs, prisoners of war. And when you went to one of these internment camps, you weren't on a vacation. Okay. It wasn't like going to Club Monaco or something, or whatever they're fucking called. It was like, you had to work. The Nazis put these people to fucking work. And do you think they paid them? No, no, they didn't pay them. So they were working, doing hard labor, and not getting paid. Lots of people, not just Jewish people. Okay, people who were sent to POW camps as well. Why has this been effectively written out of the history? Effectively written out of the collective memory of World War II. Really does a disservice to people who endured that suffering. So I was just making the point that my grandfather was essentially a slave. I mean, isn't that what you call it? If somebody's forced to work and they don't get paid, that's slavery. Was essentially a slave in a POW camp, a Nazi POW camp. He was fighting against the Nazis for the British side and was captured by the Nazis and sent to work in this POW camp. Okay. So I would just, the next time somebody fucking mentions reparations, I'm going to have to throw this in their face. Where are my fucking reparations? Okay. Where are my fucking reparations for the fact that my grandfather was forced to work for 5, maybe up to 6 years of his life in a Nazi POW camp and wasn't paid for it? Where's my family's reparations for that, bitch? I want to know. Um, so I just want to say I was clearly upset when I was doing that second live stream, worked up, and but you know, it's all the stupid censorship that I experience. I mean, why did my computer black out? Why did it? Why did I have to re-record that? And last night I was just looking back at my live streams, you know, the list of them. I wasn't necessarily watching them all, but just looking at them. Most of them are private, and just it's really off the charts, the censorship that I've experienced on YouTube and then also on Rumble. And I you know, like, it's clear that something very unusual has been happening to me on social media. Like like the way that Rumble videos were showing up at a certain point, dated December 31st, 1969, which 10 years before I was born. I was not alive in 1969. But I know enough about computers to know that 1969 in computer language is considered to be before the beginning of time, because modern computers start counting time on January 1st, 1970. So if you want something to be, the computer to think of something as before time, like out of time, basically not happened, you would put in the date of December 31st, 1969. It's like a null date. So that's the fact that something was showing up dated that way is a clue that, yeah, that was so that it wouldn't show up in, it wouldn't be recognized by computer systems, it wouldn't show up in lists. And there's just been a litany of underhanded techniques used against me. Listen to how my microphone sounded so different between those two live streams as well. One of them had the second one had such a clearer microphone. I mean, it's clear to me that my systems have been hacked and undermined in an effort to silence me and discredit me. And, you know, what does this have to, I mean, to the extent that soldiers have fought for our freedoms here in the West, the fact that we're losing our freedoms, and that, you know, especially certain people, someone like me especially, is being especially targeted in a way to undermine my freedom of speech. That is a real travesty. That is a real miscarriage of justice, and just goes to show how far we've fallen, and how illegitimate the current system really is, right? Why do they need to go to such lengths to silence me? What could I be saying that is so threatening that such lengths have to be taken to silence me? And I'm sure it's no coincidence that not a soul has come in to watch this live stream. I'm sure that that's not a coincidence. It's YouTube at it again, some underhanded way, making it so that this live stream doesn't show up in people's feeds, or if it does, it's not very many people's feeds. It doesn't get the exposure that it would get, that most users would get who don't talk about such hard-hitting topics as I do. Okay, and so it's terrible, and it does a discredit to the memory of these veterans who really did fight for our freedoms, and the fact that we're being denied those very freedoms is just so terrible. And so I think that's a good way to close this live stream. That's all I have to say for now. And peace out. Peace out, meaning I truly do want world peace. We cannot have a repeat of world wars because of the fact that we have these nuclear bombs, that if there's anything coming close to a World War II happening again, it will likely mean the end of humanity as we know it, given the advancements in weapon technology with nuclear weapons. So we cannot have a war with Russia. We cannot have a direct confrontation with between Western powers and Russia. And even an indirect confrontation like what's happening in the Ukraine is very, very dangerous and needs to be stopped. That's all I have to say for now. Peace out.